Hi everybody. So you've probably noticed that Cubasis can't export projects into your DAW. That's rather frustrating. And since I create backing tracks for my band, sometimes with Cubasis while I'm sitting in family room, and it's on my montage, and I want to put that into a DAW for a little bit more editing, or use a software synth that I really like on my DAW. Can't do that on Cubasis. So this video is to overcome that barrier. The type of iPad that I have, this is an iPad 2. And the CPU load, for example, I'm just running this over to my iPad, from my iPad into the montage. This is Don't You Forget About Me. I just created these backing tracks. And you can see the CPU load on an iPad 2. This old iPad 2 is not really super bad. So, and you get about 4 hours of life out of this kind of setup with the iPad 2. You can get them on an iPad 2 for sheesh, not too much money, and Cubasis is 49 bucks. So at any rate, so you're faced with having to get this MIDI data out of Cubasis and into your DAW, and there's a way to do that in kind of a roundabout way, but it's very, very doable, and it can really make Cubasis a useful tool. All right, let's get started with that, and let's move into the studio and see how we get this hooked up with Cubase. I'm using Cubase Pro 10.5. So assuming that you want to leave the heavy montage down in the family room and your studio's upstairs, then you want to get your iPad, and you want to get that transferred, the MIDI data transferred from the iPad to your DAW, which we'll fire up in just a moment. So basically you're going to be going from the iPad, the camera out, into the back of this I'm using as an audio interface. Any audio interface with a 5-pin DIN out and a USB input for control from your computer will work. So the 5-pin DIN out from this will then go to, in this setup, the 5-pin DIN in of the MPK261. The MPK261 is connected to my DAW via USB. So it's echoing the information. The MIDI data will go from the iPad. The MIDI data is echoed from the audio interface via 5-pin DIN into the MPK, which is echoed again through USB into my Cubase 10.5. Prior to making the transfer, I want to make note of the fact that all of your USB channels are going to be associated with a certain, these are the MIDI ports. You have MIDI port, montage port 1, channel 1, and so on and so forth. Port 1, channel 2. So these are all geared towards the montage. If I'm taking my iPad up to my studio and plugging it into the Euphoria 1820, I'm going to have to reassign these, retain the channel number, but reassign these to the Euphoria 1820. And I'll go over that in just a moment. Okay, we're now in the studio, and you can see that I've plugged this into the Euphoria 1820, and we don't have any MIDI input, or output I mean. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to assign these, and I'll give you a picture of what it looks like after they're assigned. So in the last part you saw they were assigned to the montage. I've disconnected it from the montage, and now I have it connected to the Euphoria 1820, and I'm out of breath from running up and down the stairs. Okay, I've gone to each track and I've reassigned them to the UMC 1820 Euphoria, and that's the same for each one of these channels. And then so we have set up now the iPad. Remember, this is an iPad 2, and it's now communicating with the MIDI input of the UMC 1820 via a USB connection. So now that we're in the studio, this is a graphic of the connection signal path. Now there are some alternates if you use the USB MIDI Sport 2x2, or if you just go through the montage through the MIDI Sport 2x2. So we're going to go ahead and open up Cubase, and this is going to be where we get a chance, now that we've had the signal flow all set up. Now it's time to go ahead and record. We're going to record all channels on one track. So we're going to create one MIDI track here. So this will gather all the data from the entire song as far as MIDI is concerned. Now later on in this video, I'm going to be showing you some ways to get the Cubasis audio. So the montage is unique in that it's able to record audio in addition to MIDI into Cubasis. So here we have our MIDI channel, and we're going to get it ready to record, but as you can see down here on the right, I have to hit play on Cubasis, and those little blue lines you saw there, that's just confirming that we do have MIDI data. I need to change the tempo to 111, which is the tempo of the song. This is hugely important. Make sure that you set the tempo to the same tempo as Cubasis. And then once you have everything all set up, go ahead and hit the record button, and then go over to Cubasis and hit the play button, and then you're going to notice some data being recorded. This is all the channels being recorded on one channel, or on one track, excuse me. So once you play the song through, you're going to have the resulting entire song like this. And now that we have all the MIDI data on one track, we need to dissolve this to separate tracks. But you got to be careful not to have the auto quantize on. That's what that AQ is. Whatever your DAW, don't have auto quantize. That kind of ruins the data. Some of my drum rolls in there are like 30-second notes, and that can be ruined. So being that is the case, let's go ahead and line up the MIDI data so that we can have it in sync with the 111 tempo, so that it starts on the 1. You'll notice a couple of dots there. That's the flam at the beginning of the Breakfast Club. So here I just take all the events. I put my smallest increment of a data point is the drum roll at 30-second notes. So now I just set it to 30-second note resolution, and I'm going to try to line these up. You'll see that flam way to the left. We just line that in sync with the one beat of the measure. And then once we have all that lined up, then we'll have our data that's going to be ready to be exported and dissolved. So, excuse me, the way that we do this is we're going to go ahead and get this close to track, or close to measure 1, and maybe a couple measures. And then we're going to go ahead and hit the MIDI, and there's the dissolve. And so this is just going to dissolve all the data to separate channels. You make sure to pick separate channels, and that creates 4 tracks. And so these 4 tracks are split into the individual channels that you had in Cubasis. So that way we can take all the data, put it on one track, and then dissolve it to 4 separate tracks. So we have more control over the data that we're going to be using. And then we're going to go ahead and set these all to the very beginning. The reason is because this makes it easier to sync your data. So I like to drag oops, got to put this back here. I like to drag these the borders of these data blocks to be at the very beginning of the song. So I just grab all of these. So now we've got all the MIDI data in, and all we have to do now is load in our VST synths, and then we can start putting the MIDI data on our respective synth channels. Now I've already set up the synths ahead of time, so I know I have a bass, I got drums, I got Omnisphere here, I got a couple of things, all this stuff. So all I'm doing is I'm associating. You'll notice that it says data and then a number after it on the MIDI tracks. Those are the MIDI channel numbers. So I know on channel 8, I had my drums. On channel 1, I had my bass. So what I would do is then go over to channel 8 right here. And, or no, that's channel 1. That's the bass. And then this is the drums up here. So I'm going to drag these up to my drum track. That's Groove Agent. And then I'll grab my bass. And I use Moto Bass from IK Multimedia. It's a wonderful bass program. And then the respective, I don't know what I'm going to do with these. I don't have the soft synths quite set up. So we'll have to see here. And so I grab all this data and I drag it up to, say, that one I might drag up to Retro Log because that's kind of the sharp, bright synth. And then some of the pads and choirs and stuff like that, I might use Omnisphere. They have a really great choir selection. So then I bring all of these tracks into line. Once I have them all lined up, then what I can do is I can get rid of the data tracks. I mean the MIDI tracks, because we don't need them anymore. So what I would do is, once I've confirmed that I have all the data, I just select all these and I go ahead and hit remove. So now what I've done is I've successfully imported the MIDI data. And I just rewind this. And what I can do is I can enable and solo the instruments that I really want to work with in my VST. So the other ones I might have to configure a little more. Obviously, that's a work in progress. So what we're going to do is open iTunes. And the thing is we're going to grab the audio data that was recorded off the Montage, which is a really cool tool. The Montage can record right into Cubase. So we click on the little iPad icon up here. And then we're going to go ahead and select the apps. And then with the apps, we're going to click on Cubasis. And I'm going to hit audio, and what I want to do is I want to go ahead and hit save, and that's exporting the audio from the iPad to a place on my PC. So I'm going to go ahead and just select a destination. I'm going to make a folder here that's pretty intuitive. And once I got the folder, then I'm going to select that folder. And then once I hit select folder, the data transfer will start. And it will generate all the respective folders. So you'll see up here, all of the audio has been exported. And then I look at my user audio, and there it is. That's all the audio that I have that I've recorded into Cubasis. So I can just take that audio, I can bring in the audio, because maybe there are things about the Montage that I really wanted to hang on to, and combine them with my VST inside Cubase 10.5. So I'm just going to import that audio, go to this folder, and then highlight these files, and then I'm just going to hit open, and we're going to put them on separate tracks and put on different tracks. And then so all I have to do is synchronize. Looks like I got pretty lucky, I think. Synchronize these tracks so that I can just go ahead and select which audio tracks I'd like to retain. And then which audio tracks I'd like to replace with MIDI data. So I can selectively mute some of the tracks that I don't want playing on the MIDI. And then I can mute the audio. And then what I'll be left with is audio channels that won't play, MIDI channels that will. And so here I can further refine my backing tracks to combine the VST audio and the Cubasis audio. So again, here we would go ahead and play it. Kind of a lot of work, but I believe it's worth it in my opinion.